For years, maybe your entire life, you've been taught to look at the world in a conditioned, automatic, almost unconscious way. No one ever told you what really happens when you observe. It's not just an act of seeing with your eyes or forming positive thoughts. There's an invisible code, a vibrational language, that begins the very moment your attention rests on something. And if this video has reached you, it's not by chance. There's a silent alignment happening right now between your consciousness and what the quantum field wants you to awaken to. Maybe you've already felt in the past few days a kind of internal restlessness, as if something is trying to show you a new path, but you don't yet know exactly what it is. The truth is that until now, your gaze has been merely a survival tool, trained to seek what's missing, what threatens, what could go wrong. But from this moment on, what you're about to discover has the potential to completely reverse that logic. Because observing is not just perceiving, it's interacting, it's creating, it's sending silent commands to the field that sustains your entire reality. And now, you're ready to access a level of consciousness that few dare to touch. Today, you'll understand why the way you observe has been the invisible link between what you feel and what you experience. This won't be just more information. It will be a key. And after this, the way you see, feel, and influence the world will never be the same. Most people believe that observing is simply the act of looking, a physical, immediate process limited to the eyes and the rational mind. At best, some associate observing with thinking positively, trying to control their own thoughts in the hope of attracting something better. But what almost no one realizes is that observation goes far beyond that. There is a subtle and invisible layer where every glance, every thought, and every emotion form a silent field of communication with the universe. Observing is not just noticing what's around you, it's vibrationally interacting with the fabric of reality. What you call the external world, in reality, is a continuous response to the internal place from where you observe. There's a constant flow of information happening between you and the quantum field. And this flow doesn't wait for you to be aware of it to function. It happens all the time. Your emotional state, your unconscious filters, your unspoken beliefs, all of this turns into vibrational language, a language the field understands and responds to. When you wake up in the morning and look at life through the lens of worry or anxiety, the field receives that information as a command. It doesn't judge, it doesn't interpret. It simply responds with more situations that sustain that internal state. That's why many times, even when trying to change your thoughts, reality seems to remain the same. Because the true key to observation is not in what you wish to see, but in the frequency from where you're looking. Observing is an act of silent creation, a collapse of possibilities that happens even before you form words or clear intentions. It's as if your consciousness were a beacon, and the field, a sensitive mirror, reflecting back everything you are emitting now. It doesn't matter if you're aware of it or not. The exchange is happening, and maybe that's why until today, so many of your efforts to change your life seem to have no effect. Because while you tried to act, plan, or visualize, your observation remained conditioned by old patterns, unrecognized fears, camouflaged expectations, internal stories that kept saying, things are difficult, it doesn't work for me, it's always like this. And the field simply responded. But there's something that few understand, and perhaps this is the greatest secret of conscious observation. It's not the isolated thought that creates. It's not the random affirmation sentence. It's the combination of focus, emotional state, and internal narrative. These three elements together form what we can call the vibrational signature of your observation. That's what reaches the field. That's what dictates the responses. That's why what you feel while observing matters more than any sentence you repeat. Your body is the first transmitter of your vibrational truth. When you look at a situation with fear, it's fear that the field hears. When you fake optimism but carry resentment, it's resentment that reverberates. There is no vibrational mask. The field responds to what is real, not to what is rehearsed. That's why so many manifestation techniques fail, because the focus is only on the words and not on the emotional quality of the observation. It's not about saying I am prosperous while internally feeling scarcity. It's about accessing a state of presence where your frequency truly changes. And then, observation happens from a new place. When that happens, the field reacts almost immediately. Small signs begin to appear. Different people show up. Unexpected opportunities manifest. And all this, without you having to force it, because your observation ceases to be a reflection of struggle and becomes an extension of flow. And maybe now, you're starting to understand. Observing isn't just looking. It's not just thinking. It's creating. It's vibrationally choosing what you allow the field to return to you, not out of control, but out of awareness, out of presence, out of real surrender. It's as if every second of your life were a silent conversation between what you feel and what reality shows you. And this conversation happens through your observation. That's why, from now on, the invitation is not to look differently. It's to be different while you observe. Because when you change the state from where you look, reality inevitably starts to respond. There's a silent, invisible, and absolutely decisive element in how reality responds to you. Something almost no one told you. Maybe because most people are still too busy trying to change what they see, without realizing that the true code of transformation is not in the object of your observation, but in the internal point from where you are looking. What really shapes your reality is not what you observe. It's the internal state, the emotional and vibrational place from where your consciousness performs this act of observing. Each of us carries an internal field that works like a lens, a filter, a broadcast frequency. And what the quantum field responds to is not your superficial desire, but the real vibration behind your gaze. That's why two people can look at the same situation and create completely different results. One may look with fear, with resistance, with the internal narrative that everything goes wrong. The other may look with presence, with acceptance, with openness to flow. The situation is the same, but the field's response will be completely different for each of them. There is a vibrational code that activates every time you focus your attention on something. This code is a sum of factors: your predominant emotional state, your unconscious beliefs, and the internal stories you tell about what you're seeing. Together, these elements form the energetic signature of your observation, and this is what the field reads. From this, it organizes the lines of probability and decides which reality will materialize before you. Many times, you may be trying to change external circumstances, but if the origin of your observation remains trapped in fear, scarcity, or resentment, the cycle will repeat. Because the field can only return to you what you are emitting. There's no way to deceive this communication. It happens at such deep levels that your conscious mind rarely notices. What makes this code so powerful, and at the same time so challenging, is precisely the fact that it's subtle. It's not about the words you repeat, but the energetic quality you sustain while observing. It's not the isolated thought. It's the emotional background field. It's the vibrational tone with which you relate to life. And maybe now, it starts to make sense why so often, even after studying, reading books, taking courses, reality seemed not to change. Because your observation was still anchored in an old internal state, maybe a state of lack, urgency, frustration. All of this makes up the code. All of this reaches the field before you say any word. The secret no one told you is that the real shift doesn't happen when you change what's outside, but when you change the place from where you're looking at what's outside. When you manage to access a more neutral state of presence, more open, more connected with the trust that life's flow knows the way, the code rewrites itself. And at that exact moment, the field begins to respond differently. Not because you forced it, but because you changed the origin of your emission. You stopped observing as someone who asks and started observing as someone who recognizes. You stopped looking as someone who struggles and started looking as someone who allows. This is the hidden code, The vibrational origin of your perception, the silent point from where you send all your commands to the universe. No matter how much you try to change the words, if the internal state doesn't change, the field will continue returning the same reality. The good news is that now you know, and knowing, you can choose. Choose to take a deep breath, quiet the mind, and start observing from a new place. Because the field always responds to the observer. And the way you feel while looking at life is the true code that's creating everything that happens around you. Have you ever stopped to realize where you're really looking at your life from? Not the physical place, not your social position, but the internal state, the emotional frequency, the belief field from which your observation starts every time you look at the events around you. The truth is that most of the time, you've been observing life from a place conditioned by lack, doubt, haste, and the need to control what cannot be controlled. It's as if there were an invisible filter between you and the world. A filter programmed by old memories, by experiences that left marks, by words you heard and believed, even when they weren't true. This filter is what makes you look at the present and see the past. It's what makes you want to move forward, but feel like you're stuck, as if an invisible barrier keeps pulling you back to the same cycles. How many times have you woken up with the feeling that today would be just like yesterday? How many times have you looked at your own desires and felt that mix of hope and disbelief? How many times, when trying to imagine a change, a new phase, a lighter reality, did that silent thought come along saying, what if it doesn't happen again? This is the internal place from which you've been observing, a place where the predominant emotion is resistance, where the gaze is not a window, but a repetition of old vibrational patterns, where everything that comes to you seems to just confirm what you already fear. And as long as you keep observing from this state, your reality will remain stuck, not as punishment, not from lack of worthiness, but due to vibrational coherence. The quantum field does not judge. It doesn't decide whether you deserve something or not. It simply responds to what you are emitting right now. And when your observation comes from a place of fear, anxiety, comparison, or scarcity, the field reorganizes the circumstances of your life to reflect exactly that vibration. The problem was never what you desire. The problem has always been where you're looking from. Observing from the wrong place creates a silent cycle of energetic self-sabotage. You try to change your thoughts, try to make affirmations, try to visualize. But if the origin of your observation remains loaded with doubt or lack, the result will always be the same. More blocks, more repetitions, more of the feeling that life is stuck. It takes courage to recognize this. Courage to pause for a few moments. Close your eyes and ask honestly, from where, inside me, have I been looking at life? The answer may be uncomfortable. It may come with emotions that have been stored for a long time, but it's precisely in this recognition that transformation begins. Because only when you identify the internal place from where you're looking, can you choose to change. Change the focus, change the emotional state, change the silent narrative that accompanies your thoughts. Change the observation point so that the field can finally respond to you in a different way. If all this makes sense to you, and if somehow this reflection brought light to the place from where you've been observing your own life, I want to invite you now. Take a deep breath. Feel what this truth awakens in you. And if you feel it's time to leave this place of repetition, if you choose to start observing from a new internal state, leave in the comments the sentence, "Today, I choose to look from another place." And if this video touched you in any way, like it now. Not just to support the channel, but to signal to the field itself that you are ready for this new gaze. What happens when you decide to change the internal place from where you observe your life? It's not just a change of thought or a passing mental choice. It's a deep shift in perception, a silent reorganization in your emotional, energetic, and even biological field. This internal movement has a name: vibrational realignment. And it's this realignment that the quantum field recognizes as a new command. The first step to making this shift is to honestly recognize the state you are in right now. Observe the observer. Feel, without judgment, the frequency that has been guiding your gaze at the world. Often we are so accustomed to looking at life from scarcity, fear, or comparison that we don't even realize how much this conditions us to repeat old patterns. And the first invitation is this: bring awareness to the internal place from which you've been observing. Changing the observation point is not about forcing positive thoughts. It's not about repeating phrases as if trying to convince the universe. It's about interrupting the automatic cycle of emotional reactivity. When you feel anxiety, for example, the tendency is to look at the future with anticipation of pain. When you feel guilt, your gaze gets stuck in the past. The shift happens when, even while feeling these emotions, you choose not to merge with them. You observe them without becoming them. Presence is the bridge. When you take a deep breath, slow down your thoughts, and just allow yourself to be, something subtle starts to happen. Your body exits the fight or flight state and begins to access the state of internal safety. In this space, the gaze changes. You stop looking with the need to control and start looking with the willingness to allow. Another fundamental element of this shift is emotional neutrality. It doesn't mean being cold or indifferent. It means observing life's events without immediately labeling them as good or bad, right or wrong, gain or loss. The more neutral your internal state, the clearer the field becomes to reorganize the probabilities around you. Because neutrality creates space, and it's within this space that new possibilities begin to emerge. Expanding your focus is also essential. Most of the time, when we're stuck in old patterns, our gaze narrows. Attention becomes obsessed with a specific problem, with a person, with a situation that seems insurmountable. The shift happens when you expand your perspective, when you stop looking only at the detail and start perceiving the larger movement happening around you. You begin to feel that there is a broader intelligence operating beyond your immediate understanding. And then, little by little, the body relaxes. The mind quiets down, and the frequency changes. This change in internal perspective is not an isolated event. It's a practice, a conscious training of observing yourself while observing the world, of noticing the exact moment when you start reacting, and choosing to breathe, pause, and look from a new place. When this state stabilizes, the quantum field responds, subtly at first, an unexpected encounter, a synchronicity, a response that once seemed impossible. Small confirmations that reality is already reorganizing. The observation shift doesn't require you to change everything overnight. It only requires that you change your state now, that you stop looking at life with the eyes of fear and start looking with the curiosity of someone willing to allow the new. Reality change begins with internal perspective change. When you change the place from where you observe, the field, inevitably, changes the way it responds to you. Maybe you haven't noticed yet, but as you watch this video, while you allow each word to activate a new layer of consciousness, something invisible has already begun to happen in the field around you. There is a silent, almost imperceptible reaction that the universe triggers at the exact moment you change your way of observing. It's not something you can measure with your eyes or touch with your hands. It's a vibrational reorganization, a subtle adjustment in the lines of probability that make up your reality. When you alter your internal state, the field notices, not because it's watching or testing you, but because everything you emit, everything you feel while observing, is translated into quantum information. Every emotion, every thought, every focus choice creates a new configuration in your energy field. And this configuration is like an access code that determines which events, people, and circumstances can enter your experience. The change may seem invisible, but it is real. The field begins to respond almost immediately. Small synchronicities happen. People you haven't spoken to in a long time reappear. Situations that seemed blocked start showing openings. Even your own underlying feelings, those that seemed chronic, begin to dissolve. What once seemed like coincidence now reveals its true nature, vibrational response. The field doesn't wait for you to be perfect to react. It simply responds to your most dominant emission. That's why when you change the internal place from where you observe, the field also begins to change the type of response it delivers to you. It's as if the invisible lines connecting you to your results start to reposition. You stop being aligned with scenarios of scarcity, resistance, and repetition, and start aligning with new possibilities, new people, new experiences. Not because the world changed, but because you changed the way you look at it. This process doesn't happen linearly. Often, the field's first reaction is to test your new frequency. Old situations may appear as an invitation for you to choose again. It's the moment when the field silently asks, have you really changed the place from where you observe? Or are you just trying to manipulate what you feel to get a quick result? And it's exactly there, at this transition point, where many people give up. They go back to the old state, reinforce the old patterns, and the field responds with more of the same. But if you stay, if you sustain the new state, if you observe with more presence, more neutrality, and more trust, the field has no choice. It must reorganize. This is the most powerful point of conscious creation. It's not about controlling the field. It's about adjusting your emission so genuinely, so consistently, that the field responds naturally, without forced effort, without inner struggle, just as a consequence of a new vibrational alignment. Quantum physics describes this phenomenon as the collapse of the wave function. What does that mean in practical terms? That among all the infinite possibilities that existed before, your new observation made a new reality more likely. Not because you asked, but because you became compatible with it. And that's why the change you seek has already begun. Maybe you don't see all the external evidence yet. Maybe the scenario around you seems the same. But energetically, a new movement is already happening. Like underground currents that, even invisible, begin to change the course of a river. Now, your only task is to sustain this new state of observation, not as an effort, but as a conscious choice to be, to feel, to look from a new internal place, because the field is already listening, and it, inevitably, will respond. There are moments when life starts to emit subtle signals, almost like vibrational whispers, indicating that something deep has already changed within you, even before the external reality shows evident results. These signs are not random. They are the field's initial response to your new way of observing. When you alter the internal state, the field responds first in the most subtle layers, before reorganizing the visible scenarios of your life. The first sign usually appears within you, in your underlying emotions. Suddenly, what used to cause you automatic anxiety seems to lose strength. Situations that used to trigger intense emotional reactions now pass through you in a different way. It's not that the problems disappear immediately, but your relationship with them changes. There is an unexpected sense of detachment, as if you are able to observe, without sinking into old reactions. This new emotional neutrality is one of the clearest indicators that your internal field has already begun to reorganize. The second sign reveals itself in the small synchronicities that begin to appear in your daily life. People you hadn't been in contact with for years reappear with messages that make sense exactly for what you are experiencing. An apparently random conversation brings answers you had been silently seeking. A book, a song, a phrase in an unexpected place. Everything starts to seem loaded with meaning, not because the world suddenly changed, but because the field, recognizing your new vibrational state, begins to align events, people, and information that support your new frequency. This type of synchronicity is not coincidence. It's the field's subtle language saying, I noticed your new emission. Often, these signs appear in such delicate ways that the rational mind may try to ignore them. But the heart knows. There is an internal recognition, a feeling that the universe is responding to you in a different way. The third sign is the unexpected lightness. Even if life is still presenting challenges, there is a new space within you, a gap between what happens and how you choose to react. This lightness is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of a new consciousness. You start to feel that you no longer need to control everything, that there is a flow, a greater intelligence operating alongside you, and this perception brings a kind of relief, a breath, as if finally you were leaving the state of resistance and beginning to navigate with life's flow. This feeling of lightness may arise in simple moments, during a walk, looking at the sky, breathing more consciously. It's as if the vibrational weight that once kept you stuck began to dissolve, and along with it comes a new clarity, a deeper understanding that you don't need to know exactly how things will happen. You just need to keep sustaining the new internal place from which you are observing. These three signs, change in underlying emotions, unexpected synchronicities, and sense of lightness, are the first confirmations that your new observation is already activating a new reality line. The quantum field has already begun the reorganization process. The invisible pieces are moving. The connections are being made. And even if you don't see all the external results yet, the internal movement is already real. From here, the invitation is simple but profound. Keep choosing to observe your life from this new place. Keep feeling, breathing, recognizing each small sign as a silent confirmation that you are on the path. Because with each day, each choice, each new gaze, your reality, inevitably, will continue to change. We've reached the end of our journey, and maybe now, something inside you is no longer the same. The way you observe, feel, and interact with reality has already begun to transform. You can no longer go back to the old gaze, because now, you know that the field is always responding, not to what you want, but to the internal state from where you observe. What was once unconscious has now become choice. And each breath, each thought, each emotion already carries a new vibrational code. If you've made it this far and feel that this content touched something deep within you, I want to ask for a silent sign. Write in the comments, "Now, I choose to observe with awareness." This way, besides letting us know you stayed until the end, we'll anchor this new frequency together in the field.